the rudder! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least that was the plan. Except now the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Hey guys, and welcome to the podcast. Today I have Robert Finlay, and he is a seasoned entrepreneur. He's a best-selling author. He's with 30 Capital. He's going to talk about the work that he does for his clients in real estate, commercial real estate, entrepreneurship. He's also written 2 books, Beyond the Building and Hey Dad. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation. I'm really happy to represent Rob to the audience and guests. So Rob, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. And briefly introduce yourself and we'll dive into the questions.
Sure. As you mentioned, you did a nice intro for me. Thanks. Yeah. So not much more to add. I just a lifelong entrepreneur, really focused in the segment of commercial real estate. So a lot of the businesses that I've built and have sold or maintained all focus around commercial real estate and innovation within commercial real estate.
Yeah. And what brought you to there? Were you always in real estate, or did you have a career and then you transitioned?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in a real estate family. So when you grow up in a real estate family, that's pretty much all, right? You go on vacations and we're looking at properties, we're looking at projects. But no matter what, I wanted not to be in commercial real estate. When I graduated from college, I was like, oh, I want to be investment banking. Because don't forget, when I graduated, it was the late 80s, early 90s, and it was exciting, right? It was Wall Street and all this other stuff. And so that's what I wanted to do. But when I got there, they were like, wait a second, you have all this history of real estate. You're going to go into real estate. And so I started out and just kept in real estate, and grateful that I did.
Yeah. Fascinating. So the next question I have for you is, we talked about your motivations for coming onto the podcast, which is talk about your books and promote your brand. You're on the podcast. What do you want people to come to you for? What questions are they asking to seek you?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to who the audience is, right? And I think, as we mentioned, one of the things about me is I have a lot of interests in a lot of things, right? So I have my business side, my 30 Capital side, which is really all about commercial real estate and risk management associated with commercial real estate, whether it's debt risk management, it's property risk management, or it's corporate compliance risk management. 30 Capital is really focused on those pillars of risk management for commercial real estate. So I've got that side of the business. But then when I go into things like my books, sure, one of my books happens to be more on the real estate side, but one of my books, Hey Dad, which is the last book I just wrote, is all about advice that I wanted to give to my young adults as they enter into adulthood. I get questions from my kids all the time saying, hey, Dad, how do I fill in the blank, right? How do I get a 401k? How do I do this? How do I do that? And so I thought it would be a lot of fun to just write a book and put it all into one place where kids who are graduating from college or graduating from high school have like this very easy to read book on what you need to know in order to be a successful adult. So then I talk about stuff like that in some of the other books I'm writing. And then also into the farming. I really believe in regenerative farming. For those of you who are watching the podcast, you can see I'm actually dressed in more of my farming outfit today than I am my work or my writer outfit.
Yeah, interesting. So diving deeper into the conversation, because my question for you, because a lot of the audience, they are in real estate. We have a lot of doctors and professionals, and they use real estate either as passive income, cash flow, or tax. What are your thoughts on the commercial real estate side? Because I know it really took a hit after COVID, and there's this interest rate, and there's drama at the Fed. And what are your thoughts on commercial real estate now?
I think that commercial real estate is a fantastic investment. It's a fantastic investment for active investors as well as for passive investors. I think so I'll start with that. The hard part with real estate investing really comes down to there's a lack of transparency, right? And so you're investing, whereas I can go into the stock market, I can get all the information I want about a company, bond market, ETFs, they're filled with information. Whereas a lot of these investments that are made privately through syndications tend to be very opaque and private. And so as an investor, you're not really sure what you're getting unless you arm yourself with knowledge. So I think that's the key point. Commercial real estate is a great investment, but it's really important to understand where the risks are, how to ask questions, and how to avoid the noise of great returns, hey, you can double your money or make this huge IRR, and really understand risk-adjusted returns.
Yeah. And the follow-up question I have for you is, again, what are your thoughts on because I was listening to this interview recently, and they were talking about how the majority of the activity are now in the private markets, and unless you're an accredited investor, people don't have access to the private markets, and you got like really great companies. So what are your thoughts on just where the industry is going, private versus public markets?
Yeah, I think private real estate will always exist, right? And I think it is a great place. I do think where else can you invest locally into an asset that you can see, right? And so it really makes that a great investment. Quite frankly, being an accredited investor isn't what it used to be, right? It's not like you have to be a billionaire, right? You have to have 250,000. And so a lot of people apply. And I think in this case, it adds to the diversification of a well-balanced portfolio, which is really important. And commercial real estate does have those things: asset appreciation, current income, all of the things that you really want from an investment standpoint. But back to that point about transparency and finding deals, right? It's very difficult. If there is this sort of, the market is broken, right? You have all these real estate sponsors want investors. Investors want sponsors, right? They want to make investments, but that market is broken. And it's actually not that bad of a thing, because I think it's really important that investors know what they're investing in. And that's where it comes down to spending some time knowing who the sponsors are, who the people who are building these projects, who are looking for investors. Really get to know them and really get to do some due diligence, because if you're going to write a check for, I don't care if you're writing a check for 50,000 or 500,000, you want to make sure that you have that money. You really want to know where that money's going to, and where is that person really going to shepherd my money? It also comes down, right? We talked about a little bit about interest rates, right? Real estate, and this is one of the things with commercial real estate in particular, to get into commercial real estate requires zero skill, zero. And I've probably offended thousands of people there. But quite frankly, if you have money, you can go invest and buy commercial real estate. It's very simple to do. It's how you operate. And that comes down to, there's not a lot of things out there where you can just buy something like this and you can become massive just by being able to attract money. So really understanding that, as an investor, and we invest passively as well as actively in commercial real estate, but being a passive investor, you really need to look at and making sure that people are advocating for you as the investor. I think we're seeing a lot of situations now where investors went in, they invested in deals back in the 21, 22, and those properties are not doing as well. And new equity is coming in, and those passive investors are getting squashed. So there's a lot of dynamics to this space that people just, once again, it comes down to education. If you're going to do something, educate yourself.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
2 outs, As a sports fan, I have to confess. Sometimes the game gets kind of boring. That's when I unfold my Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7 and use multi-window viewing on its large screen. Boring game? I'm checking out my fantasy baseball league at the same time. Score still 1-0? I'm replying to emails in the other window, scoring points with the boss. Semifinals finally getting exciting? I'm buying tickets to the finals and booking my flights. Can your phone do that?
The new Galaxy Z Fold 7. Get yours at Samsung.com.
Yeah. And another question I have for you is, because you've had a career on Wall Street, you worked at Credit Suisse and Lehman Brothers, and you've seen the whole financial industry really change. Went from you had paper, and then you had a desktop, you had the web, you had mobile, now you have zero commissions. And recently there was a interview by Vlad talking about how they want to tokenize stocks on the blockchain. What are your thoughts on the whole FinTech and advancing the whole financial infrastructure?
I think just generally, I think we're looking at two right now in my lifetime. I don't think I've ever witnessed two major technological breakthroughs like we're seeing right now. And this is, it's not Bitcoin, it's not blockchain. I think those are great and all that stuff. But between AI and the GLP-1s have dynamically changed our world, right? So now you've got people who are going to be skinnier, who can live longer or healthier. And you've got AI that is helping people do their jobs better, helping them be more creative, helping them leverage themselves. So those two technological breakthroughs, and I'm not going to talk about GLP-1s because that's outside my area, but AI is quite frankly remarkable. And AI is going to change. It's going to help, back to this point of being an investor in commercial real estate, utilizing AI to help you be a better investor, to help you ask the questions that you need to ask is huge. Understand getting financials. We have a software where we bring financials in from real estate investments, and AI goes through it and acts as almost as an auditor, so that we can prep and ask the questions that we need to know. And very granular, detailed questions that people might not have the background for. So we're starting to see this thing. So it's allowing people to utilize and leverage technology in a way to become better for themselves. And I think that's going to be remarkable. And I think we're going to see the whole dynamic shift of FinTech and prop tech and all these other things, which quite frankly are tough businesses. But I think you're going to start to see the benefit of people really wanting to learn AI.
Yeah. Because I've ChatGPT, I've created custom GPTs to help me analyze the best performing stocks, and it's almost like basically replaced my financial advisor.
Absolutely. So, hey, think about this. Could you imagine? And if you learned a prompt, I think one of the challenges is like trying to get my generation and my parents to understand how to do these prompting and having it, that you can have it ask you questions. I'm like, once I realized that the best way to get to it is say, here, ask me the questions I want to ask that you need to ask me in order for me to create the question that you want to answer. And it's very powerful, but we're talking about, it's replacing what we've created at one of our companies, basically, and it's probably not helping our marketing, but it's effectively replaced or at least levered my asset managers, my debt managers, my finance majors, my accounting group, my marketing group, all of them. And the best part is they work 24/7. And I work on my phone because I'm a real estate guy, so I'm on the road all the time. So really is incredibly powerful stuff.
Yeah. Along those same lines, I was listening to another interview by Larry Fink. He's BlackRock CEO, and he's talking about tokenizing real world assets. So basically, I could own a share of the most valuable building in Manhattan, and I could buy a portion of that and own it and have ownership. What are your thoughts on tokenizing real world assets such as real estate?
Absolutely. Look, the idea of the old title companies is somebody does a record search and stuff like that. It's just so antiquated, right? So utilizing blockchain for real world assets is incredible. And I think it helps. It will definitely help. A friend of mine was talking about one of the companies that he's involved in, and they're using blockchain to token IP. And it's just, these are like real world things. And yes, they will happen once people separate blockchain from cryptocurrency. There's still, it comes down to education, folks. It's the bottom line is you can't just listen to the news, right? You have to do a little bit of research yourself. But I think that's where, once that starts to happen, where they're separated, like blockchain is a technical benefit, whereas cryptocurrency is obviously a speculative market.
Yeah. So if someone was listening to this interview and podcast, and either the sons and daughters of the professionals listening to this, they're interested in investment banking or finance, what would you tell them? Because it sounds like all of this technology is basically just going to eat up a large portion of the workforce. So what would you tell them if they're interested in finance or financial services, investing? How would they approach it?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know what, honestly, I have no idea. I really do. It's remarkable. There was a debate on our trading floor yesterday where we talk about jobs numbers, right? And our jobs numbers different because is it because the economy is actually weaker, or is it because the jobs are going away and aren't there? So how do you determine, are companies being more efficient? Is a company more efficient if they don't need as many employees? And yes. And so is AI, I have young children or young adults who are entering the workforce. And yes, the jobs that they thought they were going to have when they started college are not there and are not the same jobs, which is why I think there's this huge push now on people becoming more, what are the jobs that are insulated from or protected from this stuff? It's probably not investment banking. It's probably more like plumbing and electrical, HVAC and all that stuff. But yeah, for people who want to be in investment banking, like any job, what do you do that's special? And I think people need to find that and really focus on that. Hey, you're a creative storyteller. Okay, then utilize the tools to become a creative storyteller and use that to your advantage for a job.
Yeah. And along those same lines, is a career on Wall Street, is that kind of an obsolete idea, such as working for a company for 50 years and retiring? Is working on Wall Street, which was like the gold standard, is that an obsolete idea where we can work in Austin or Miami or San Francisco? How are jobs going to be with remote work and technology?
Right. I think I personally believe that at least my experience on Wall Street was fantastic. I wouldn't trade it. It was very different, right? It's very different now than it was when I was there. That was 30 years ago. So things have completely changed. But I think that being said, there's always some credibility, right? And so I think for people who maybe not have that Ivy League college or those credentials of a top-notch university, if you can get into Wall Street and you can go through an analyst program and you can come out, you've done it, right? You can do it, and that will give you the credibility because nobody will look any further than that. Yeah. That being said, I think it comes down to what people really want to do. I think we're starting to see such a dynamic shift where people can do almost anything they want, and the barriers to entry of things are almost non-existent. So, do you need to lose 20 years of your life by putting in 5 years at Goldman Sachs? Yeah, it's probably pretty cool. Would I do it again? Probably, but it doesn't. But I don't think that determines anything. And I've always thought it's just like in the military, right? I think if I look at people when I do recruiting and look at resumes, if somebody went into the Marine Corps or was a Navy SEAL or did something in the military, I look at that as, hey, you've accomplished something that's special, that separates you from somebody else. Whereas, hey, you worked at Goldman Sachs or you worked at wherever, yeah, that separates you.
Yeah. Really fascinating conversation. And to end it out, we're entering into this age of abundance where basically you said barriers are and we're unleashing all this value, and a lot of gatekeepers are getting kicked out, getting out of the way. What is your book, Hey Dad, bringing it back, just the human side, where basically, again, another interview I was listening to where Peter Diamandis, he was saying that money is going to be not like we in the past we had to work for money, but now it's going to be so abundant that we can pursue our passions. So how does that tie into your book, Hey Dad, and kind of real world life lessons?
Yeah, I don't know if money's ever going to be so abundant that people are just going to, I think that's a fantasy. When you're paying rent and your rent is 40% and you have no chance of getting a home, I don't know if there's so much abundance of money. Maybe for the top percentages, there's abundance of money. Right? If I'm Jeff Bezos, sure, I got an abundance of money. I do believe that for me, the big thing for my book was the book started out as to be very practical, almost humorous, like how to get an apartment, how to get a job, how to do all these things. But what really happened while doing this, the most time I spent was actually on the first chapter. And the first chapter was, okay, oh crap, I just graduated. Now what? The market might have shifted. And that becomes this psychological block for a lot of young kids, because since the time they were young children, right? In the United States, since the time you're in kindergarten, your life is basically pre-programmed all the way up, right? You're okay, I go to first grade, second grade. And with our hovering parents, right? Everything is set up, everything from what sports you're going to play to everything else. All of a sudden that merry-go-round stops. And you're sitting there as a young adult and you're like, wait a second, what do I want to do? Who am I? And finding purpose, and why it became such an important part of the book, it was because it was much more psychological than practical. But it also reminded me of for most people, we go through these changes in our life where they are big changes, and we have to be able to adapt as humans as to who am I? What do I want to be? Yeah, we've got friends whose their wives are struggling because their last kid has gone off to college and they were moms. Who are they now? I've got people who retire. Who am I now? I faced it when I sold my first business. Real shocker. Yeah, I sold my business. I had money. I'm like, great, I can do whatever I want. But who am I? So that part of that book. So to the people who are reading back to the book, it is about that first chapter, right? It's about who are you? What do you want to do? How do you find purpose in your life? And how do you find happiness with that purpose? And that really, if you can solve that, doesn't matter. The abundance of money is a relative thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I graduated right into the 2008 financial crisis, and a lot of my friends and colleagues, it was like they got hit by a truck. And luckily I was studying a lot beforehand and preparing, but I love to hear this from you. And how can people find you and connect with you, reach out to you, pick your brain, and work with you?
Yeah, please just go onto my website. It's robfinlay.com. So it's Finlay. So Rob, R-O-B, Finlay.com. I'm on all the social channels. And and you'll see that, as I said, when we talked earlier, I'm all parts, right? I'm in farming, I'm in this and that and all sorts of things. But the most important thing, I do like to hear back from people. I do want to hear comments from people, and questions or issues, I try to remain approachable.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks so much for coming on, and keep up the great work.
Thank you very much. And great. Thanks for having me.